Hello YouTube. I just wanted to film an introduction for this video to let you know what my method was for all of these spray cans. And first thing I did was I immersed them all in my irresponsibly hot tap water for about 10 minutes. Shook each can for a minute. I sprayed on one coat. All of the paints have been allowed to dry for at least 7 days. According to all of the manufacturers' websites and information sheets, they need between 5 and 7 days, so we are beyond that. Then for the minis, these are all Reaper Bones Orc Swordsman. I bought 2 new packages of them. I washed all of them with soapy water using a toothbrush. I patted them dry. I dried them in front of a fan so they'd be very dry, and then spray painted them. This is my second video on priming Reaper Bones, and these are all rattle can paints and primers that I have heard people recommend or otherwise discuss when Reaper Bones comes up. First one will be Krylon Camouflage, and I am going to try to zoom in here a little bit. There we go. And I like this. It's a nice satin finish. It's almost matte, but there's a little bit of a shine to it. So from a stickiness perspective, there's a little bit of stickiness here. Having tested all of these before I started, I'm going to say that this is a 1 out of 5. Coverage on it is good, and it looks like the paint is adhering to the plastic pretty well. Next is the Rust-Oleum Camouflage. Also a very satin finish. This one's, I would say this is matte. There's very little shine to this. My objection to it is when I've been testing to see how sticky it is, and this is also a 1, it's not sticky at all. You'll notice these light spots. This is just from doing this. The paint has pulled away from the miniature. This is the Rust-Oleum Paint Plus Primer. Very shiny. I have my doubts about how well paint will stick to this. It is very tacky. It feels sticky. And currently this is the 5 out of 5 on our stickiness. It looks like I'm getting paint on my fingers from this one. So good work. This is the only gray one in this test. This is the Rust-Oleum primer that I already had sitting around. I paid about $6 for it at a local store. It is a little bit tacky, probably on the order of a 3 out of 5, and also a satiny finish. Next is Rust-Oleum Paint for Plastic. Very shiny. Coverage with the color, with the pigmentation, is decent. Actually, it's good. I'm going to say it's good now that I'm actually looking at it under harsh light. It is not at all sticky. This is going to be the number 1 or level 1 stickiness, and I'm going to call those other camouflage paints a 2. And it appears like it doesn't currently have any missing spots. The Krylon Fusion, which I don't know that Krylon sells anymore. I think they have Fusion with primer. Right off the bat, I didn't like the amount of pigment in this. It looked kind of like a green ink wash. It is still very sticky. So this is the Krylon Camouflage after being rattled around. First thing to notice is there is some damage to the flat spots here on the base, and other than that, he looks pretty good. So let's see how the shield takes paint. I'm going to put a little bit of Reaper MSP Beastie Brown, I think it is, Ruddy Brown, that's mixed with Flow Aid 50/50, just like I did in my last video. Just here on the shield. It should be a little less awkward because I'm not filming through the lens, but how does this primer take paint? That feels good. That's going on. It's surprisingly thick, but feels like the primer wants to hold on to the pigment and the acrylic base in here. I like that quite a lot, and having used this before, I'm not surprised. Next is the Rust-Oleum camouflage, and this is beat up. Let me grab my brush here, my pointer brush. So over the eyes, on the chin, on the wrist pieces here, on the base, his thumb, the shield, the tip of the sword, all over the shoulder guards here, all over the little details on the back. Not impressed with this. If you're painting minis to take to public games, they're going to get beat up. So you're going to want a primer, a base coat that will hold on to paint. And you certainly don't want that base coat coming up. So this shield also feels pretty good. Feels like I might need a little more paint on here. No, that's okay. I haven't used this before, so I don't know how it's... I didn't have any expectations for this. And that's not too bad. It's got a little beat up on the leading edge of the shield, tip of the sword. This scabbard back here is a little beaten up, the elbow, the shoulder pads. A little bit on the base. The face, I don't know if you can see that. The face looks a little beat up. So let's see how well a sticky spray paint holds on to Minis paints. So doesn't feel bad. Just what I was concerned about. It doesn't feel like it's sticky under the brush. I have painted with the Rust-Oleum paint and primer before. I have not had paints or primers stay this sticky. It does look like it's not really taking all of the pigment and the paint compared to the others. There's a lot of the green showing through. It looks like it's maybe pushing away a little bit on some of these high spots. So this will have a few minutes to dry, and then we'll go over them again at the end of the video. Rust-Oleum flat gray primer. I have high hopes for this stuff. So far, that looks like that's just adhesive or some kind of fuzz on there. Let me stick that back down. And this looks good. I do not see a lot of really any damage to this. So let's go ahead and get some paint on the flat spot on that shield, and we'll see how this goes. Load up the brush here. It's a little too much. There we go. It's not bad. It does feel a little rubbery, for lack of a better term. It feels like there's a little bit of dragging under the brush, but overall not bad. I've also used this just primer before. I've let it sit for about a half hour before starting painting and haven't had any long-term issues with it. Looks like has similar issues as the Paint Plus primer in terms of how much it wants to accept the paint. But we'll, again, let this sit and we'll see what happens. This is the Rust-Oleum paint for plastic. And after the 2 minutes of tumbling, it looks pretty good. I don't really see a lot of damage. There's maybe a little scuffing there, but no chips, no removal of the paint. So that's promising. And let's go ahead and get some paint on here. And okay, that feels pretty good. I don't think the glossy finish on this is really hurting the process any. I wouldn't be upset if I was doing this for some, tabletop minis. Got to get them out for the game tomorrow. If that was a situation, I wouldn't be mad at all. Might not be thrilled if I was trying to paint for something a little nicer or something for a competition, although, to be fair, I don't know that I would use Reaper Bones for any of that. So this is different from the other primers. This seems to be drying out the acrylic base, and when I went back to do some touch-up, I don't know if you noticed, but it started to pull away some of the color as this was as I was trying to do the correction. So I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want it to look like a terrible mess. But that would be a strike against it, is that it seems to be drying the paint more quickly than I'm expecting. We have the Krylon Fusion designed for plastic, and this is also kind of beat up. Definitely inside there, maybe one of the D4s got in there. It looks like there's a little bit of scuffing on this scabbard. Now it's really noticeable that the pigment has pooled in the folds of the, I don't know, the kilt thing that this guy's wearing. Maybe you noticed that before. I was looking at some other things. But let's see how the shield takes this paint. And there we go. Nice brush load. And it feels pretty good to start, but that doesn't really mean anything, as we've discovered. Yeah, this feels kind of gummy. I know it's hard to describe the feeling. The paint doesn't want to move like I expected, and like the Rust-Oleum for plastic, it feels like the binder's drying really quickly on this. It's been a few minutes. Let's take a look at the Krylon. Get this in real close here and try to get it to focus. Thank you, old phone. That's not bad for a first coat. If I was going to do other parts of this mini, I would thin this out just a little bit more. I do like very thin coats and building up. So there we go. That's the Krylon Camouflage. This is the Rust-Oleum Camouflage. There are some light spots where the primer pulled away from the plastic, which if I was trying to do something really fancy, that would be problematic. Rust-Oleum 2X paint and primer, and glossy finish from the paint and primer. Sort of splotchy results from what I'm seeing on the shield. Looks like there are some places where the paint had really good adhesion and other places where it is a little bit lighter. I don't know if the camera is picking up that level of detail. Okay, moving on to the flat primer. I've used this before. I knew what to expect, and it lives up to expectations. There's good uniform pigment distribution on this shield. As with the other paints, I might thin this out a little bit more if I was going to do more, but I am happy with that result. Next is the Rust-Oleum for plastic, and I do not like this result at all. Very inconsistent paint adhesion. You can see where it's very streaky. You can see the shiny base coat coming through. I'm going to turn this back and forth a few times so you can really see that. It looks sort of chalky up here with bright streaks. Maybe that's where I tried to do a final fix and it pulled the paint off. I don't know, but I am not happy with this. And I would not use Rust-Oleum plastic. Finally, the Krylon Fusion. Similar result to the Rust-Oleum paint for plastic. Very splotchy, inconsistent pigmentation here. It's looks very heavy in the cracks on these flat spots. It's very light. Looks like it was just too easy to pull the paint away from the flat spots. Overall, I would not use the Krylon Fusion for miniatures painting. Okay, final thoughts on this. With the Krylon Camouflage, I like the results on this orc. I have used this before. I sort of knew what to expect coming in. I don't think that the tackiness of the model is a problem. It might actually be a benefit in this case. For $7.71, I would buy this again. The Rust-Oleum camo is less good than the Krylon Camouflage. The paint adhesion looks less even, and at $13.94, if that was going to be my regular price, I would avoid Rust-Oleum Camouflage. Next is the Rust-Oleum Paint Plus Primer. It's certainly cheap enough at $4 a can, and it does a reasonable job of base coating along with priming, and I would consider using it again, but only because of the price. I'm not thrilled with how well it takes the paint or the fact that it's got a satin underfinish to it. The Rust-Oleum primer I would definitely use again. I've used it a lot. It's been my go-to primer. I like the way it takes paint. I like the way it looks now. I like that it has a more matte finish to it than the Paint Plus primer. My only concern with these is that the Rust-Oleum primers come in shades of gray, and I believe they do black and white as well. So I would need to paint on my own base coat, which is the issue there. Next is Rust-Oleum Paint for Plastic, $8.05 on Amazon. I probably wouldn't buy it again. I don't like the shiny surface on it, even though it is dry to the touch. I also don't like the way that it dries out the acrylic paint very quickly. Last is the Krylon Fusion, $11.36 on Amazon. I don't like the pigmentation of it. I don't like that the surface is still sticky. I don't like how it takes the acrylic paint, and this can will not be used for any more miniatures. I absolutely cannot recommend it for Reaper Minis.